Freeman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority.
8:37 on the Morning Majority. Brian Naiman and Mary Catherine Ham here in D.C. Brian Wilson live from Columbia, South Carolina. We get to talk to Brett Baier this morning. Good morning, Brett.
Good morning.
He's, of course, a Fox News special report. I have so many things that broke yesterday that I could ask you about. You spent a lot of time in Iowa. You know a lot about Iowa. The caucuses, it turns out, Santorum won-ish. We're not sure if it's a win or not. Does that matter, and should it matter as we move forward?
Well, of course it matters. But you're right. It is just so unsatisfying for the Santorum folks, I think. The big bounce, of course, was the day after, and the headlines that Romney wins by 8 votes, or, and it really squelched what would have been the headline that would have sustained Santorum probably at least for a longer bounce than he got. He arguably didn't get much of a bounce at all out of his amazing finish from nothing to tied for first. Now we learn that he's up 34 votes, but there's 8 precincts missing. He gets a call from Governor Romney yesterday congratulating him. The Santorum campaign puts out, well, the Romney campaign has conceded. The Romney campaign then puts out a release and says it was not a concession. And Santorum says, well, what was he congratulating me for?
Right.
Like sunshine in South Carolina. So it was just a surreal thing. And then you add to that all of yesterday with Perry dropping out and Marianne Gingrich speaking out and the debate last night. I mean, it was arguably the biggest day in political news in a long time.
I've got to catch up with Rick Santorum yesterday, and the one thing that I noticed is he really is hitting his stride as a campaigner. His messaging is stronger. He looked really good in the debate last night. Of course, everything was overshadowed by this whole Newt Gingrich thing. He seems to, have really been doing well. One wonders what would have happened if the headline out of Iowa had been Santorum wins.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. I mean, I think it's a different dynamic. I mean, all those stories that Mitt Romney was the first in history to win both, and all of those hours of television dealing with Mitt Romney, the winner of Iowa and New Hampshire, I think changed the dynamic, or would have. And I agree. I went to a number of Santorum events. I think his campaigning is really picked up, and he can go really into the weeds on detailed answers if you want them. And some of those folks in some of those places want them.
Does this change the way we deal with the Iowa caucus in the future as media or the GOP and the decisions it's making?
I think it could portend bad things for Iowa, I think, in the next 4 years. I don't know, but I just think that this is already there was this feeling like the GOP and frankly the Democrats as well give Iowa too much prominence, and then in addition to that, to have this happen in the caucus system, I don't think it bodes well.
Well, yeah, there's still 8 precincts missing apparently, or haven't officially filed in Iowa. If I were Romney, I would say I'll release my tax returns as soon as Iowa releases those 8 precincts.
Yeah, I think it's still the guy with the truck. He's driving around someplace with those ballots.
Aren't you glad you stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning live on television for that?
Could we just have done 2 more hours and wrap something up?
So how do you think that Newt handled it last night? You've been on the stage before when Newt goes after the media. And, it seems from our listeners this morning that they were pretty pleased with the way he handled it last night.
He did it pretty skillfully. I mean, there are very few politicians who could manage to be that who could pull that off.
Yeah.
I mean, very few politicians could pull that off. I felt for John King. I don't know if I would have asked it first, but you would have had to ask the question.
Sure.
It was the story of the day, or one of the stories of the day, and so it was, wow, what a way to start a debate.
Yeah, it was an amazing day yesterday with everything that went down. Do you believe that this could short-term help Newt, long-term damage him, or is it just, we're going to forget about this in a couple of days like we tend to do with a lot of stories when it comes to these politicians?
Well, I think short-term, because of how he handled it last night and because of just the feeling of this coming out 2 days before a primary, that short-term there may be a backlash against the media, against the process, especially after his answer, and he could actually, somehow in a strange way see a bump from it for attention there. I think the momentum is clearly on Newt's side in South Carolina, and he could win, very well could win on Saturday. In the long term, as people get their head around Newt Gingrich as the nominee, I think it could pose problems.
I saw Dana Perino on the Fox News channel yesterday, and she said something I thought was very interesting, that, long term, this is not going to sit well with many women voters. And I think she's dead on with that particular point. I think the way Newt handled it plays very well here in South Carolina. But if it were to become, let's say, Newt Gingrich versus Barack Obama, and you need that middle, you're probably that this incident will be remembered by women voters in the general election, don't you think?
Yes, I think he has a good answer. He has a good, there's some inoculation from Governor Perry, who says, Newt is not perfect. Who among us is? I believe in redemption and forgiveness. And Newt Gingrich's answer about being a grandfather and wise and, asking forgiveness from God is powerful in a way. But you're right, it does stick in the back of people's mind, especially independents, and it could pose a problem. I'm just surprised that Mitt Romney, in some of his answers, has not been more practiced, rehearsed on tax records or things that, of course, were going to come up again last night.
Well, he even called it Romney Care last night, which we thought was kind of interesting.
Bizarre.
That he branded it himself.
Wouldn't you have a bumper sticker, answer to the tax record thing after Monday night?
We're on,
he
4 or 5
not.
rounds of this at this point.
I heard Britt Hume talking about that. He said, it's like the Romney campaign doesn't get how that plays with people. They just can't quite wrap their heads around why that question keeps getting asked.
Yeah, and I can't put my finger on it, but I guess it's the feeling. I talked to folks on the ground in Iowa and South Carolina is that it's a connection issue, like an emotional connection. They want to believe that they should vote for Mitt Romney because he's on paper the guy that they should vote for, but it's this emotional connection of conservatives who are worried that he can't articulate in a way that satisfies them their points of view.
All right, now primaries on Saturday. I'm sure you guys will be busy this weekend at the Fox News Channel.
We start at 6 p.m. Coverage, and we'll go as late as it goes.
Hopefully we'll have the right results.
Right, there we go.
That's right.
All right, Brett, good to talk to you as always.
We'll see you guys.
See you.
Hi, Brett.